hang around Diablo's every night. Trying to fit in with the crowd, making bets and picking fights. But that was your story. Before me, why do we give all the glory to the one that you are now?
Stefan, where in the world have you brought us today?
I was just driving by and I saw this farmer market right here at Elon Community Church, and it's in the parking lot, and I thought we'd pick up a few things.
And so we'll do that. And we're just trying to get a little bit of understanding of our understanding about the table, but also it's World Communion this weekend.
Yeah. So I thought it might be good to practice a little bit what communion should actually be like.
Yeah. So maybe we'll meet some friends. Maybe we'll definitely get some food items, some bread, some fruits.
We'll have a good time.
Some drinks and have a good time. So come along for the ride.
Let's see what we find. Welcome to the table.
'Cause old habits die when you wanna live. I don't see the old you, I just see the new. God put you in my life for such a time as this. I don't see the old you, I just see the new. So I heard you used to go down on South Street, making ends and your money meet. Worry about what you're gonna eat. Yeah. Let's talk about how you skipped over your grave. 2 hands, 1 prayer, and everything changed. And I know the truth, and you know it too. Old habits die when you wanna live. I don't see the old you, I just see the new. God put you in my life for such a time as this. I don't see the old you, I just see the new. All the wrongs you wanna right, all the dark you wanna light, yeah, that's what you need. I see you.
Hello, folks. Welcome to At the Table. I am Ray. Most of you watch us, so that right here, buddy Stefan. Many of you remember Jay, elder in the I Methodist Church and also videographer extraordinaire. And today we found a friend, Gabriella. Gabriella is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is a grad student here at Elon, who happens to be in the videography world and digital world. That's what her degree is going to be in. And we just got to chatting and we said, hey, why don't you join us? And what is just really wonderful is she's Jewish, and we are grateful for her presence because we were just talking about it's World Communion Sunday.
Yeah.
And so we're at the meal, and a Jewish friend of mine a few years ago, we're at his house for Thanksgiving and had a mini, if you will, Passover meal that
like
he celebrated.
M-I-N-I?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
M-I-N-I, yes. Not M-A-N-Y. And he turned to me and he said, you know, we know how to do this. We get this right more than you guys do. And I said,
So Ray,
yeah,
let me offer a theory on why.
Yes.
I've been at a Passover meal at a house. My theory, which is for them, it's not a ritual performed at an altar. It's a story told at a table.
At a table.
Right? And it's a story that that when you're young, you're like, why do we do this story? Right? But as you get older, like, no, wait a minute. This story isn't a story. This story defines like my roots. And it has the opportunity to define who I am in a profound way. And that's why I would say immediately at the start, I think they're right.
Yeah.
Because we've stripped it of that and we've made it a ritual performed at an altar, and it's really lost so much of its heart in that way.
That's sad. It's lost a lot of what it has at the hands of the theological types. And that's sad commentary.
Can I ask you, how often have you ever been a part of a Passover meal?
Like every year.
Every year. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what's like the anticipation in the field going up to it? How has that progressed from when you were little on up to now?
Yeah.
When I was little, I really liked like the afikomen part.
Yeah.
Because we would hide the afikomen someplace.
Yes. Yes.
And then we would negotiate with like my mom or my dad or my grandparents for something. Like one year I got an iPod Touch.
Oh, so when you find
Big
it, you
time
get to,
negotiations.
So we would hide it.
Oh.
And then they would be like, "Where is it?"
Where is it?
Yeah.
See, that's pretty neat. That's fun. So what sort of feelings does that, just the mention of a Passover meal, evoke for you?
Like good ones, like happy ones, like all of us, like as a family together.
Yeah, see,
so usually
at-
go into
at
like
the
my
table.
grandparents. Yeah.
Right. So okay. So can I just ask for a second? So where are your grandparents originally from?
We're from Pittsburgh.
I mean, like, where does the family go when you go back deeper down in the line? Where are they from?
Like
Mine are like
Yeah.
mine, like you go back like 6 generations and we're all from England.
we're like all over the place.
Yeah, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Same
yeah.
with like the other side of the
So
family.
think about this for a second. So that meal you guys celebrate, that has been likely an unbroken line going back well over 1,000 years, 1,500 years, 2,000 years, possibly 3,000 years. Is there ever a meal in the world such as that meal? There isn't. There's no meal that comes anywhere close to that, where you in your house celebrating it. It's like that's a on earth it's an unbroken line. Who knows exactly in your family, but on earth it's an unbroken line taking that thing
I
back.
also like that everything represents something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
So
right.
each like course, each thing.
And it's maintained that line for generations, but also it becomes, unbelievably, it becomes so personal.
Yeah, right.
It becomes deeply personal, tells our story, and I am not alone. I am in this line forever.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just unbelievable. And you were telling me a story earlier about your family had a dish that you loved.
So my family, not Jewish, but we did, on my mom's side, she's from Panama, Central America, and she grew up in Central America. And oftentimes, one of the dishes that we would have when I was younger, my great-grandmother would make arroz con wandu, which is rice and lentils.
what?
Arroz con wandu.
Okay.
Which is just rice and lentils.
Rice and lentils.
Yeah. But it's
Arroz.
arroz con wandu.
Okay.
I don't have a great Spanish accent. Jay, thank you. But we would often have a roast con wandu, and we would go over to my great grandmother's house at least twice a month, and that was on the table. But I always remember when I was really young, I didn't notice it until a little bit later. But my mother and my uncle, when they were there eating the meal, they would be the last ones to get to the table. So
Now hold on though. Did you like this stuff?
yeah, absolutely.
That it was like the meal,
still
everybody
love
loved you. People loved it.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
so, have you made it?
Traditional family favorite. I have not made it.
What?
No.
He loves to cook.
This is one of those things that when your grandmother makes it, you're not sure you're
You'll
ever
never
gonna
make it
the
that
same.
good
Oh.
ever.
Oh,
It's-
so you
this is
can
one
make
of
it at
those
my
things.
house and we wouldn't know the difference.
Probably.
Oh,
But I
okay.
would. I would.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
Well,
But anyway, so it's a cool recipe.
we love that recipe, and it's been a while since I've had it, but I still think of it fondly. The thing that always surprised me was when everything was on the table and everything had to be on the table before you were allowed to sit there. And so the table's all set. The arroz con wandu that had been pulled out of the pot that my great grandmother had been using since her grandmother used it, had it forever and ever. That was all seemingly emptied out, and everything was set on the table. My mother and my uncle would always be the last ones to make it out of the kitchen and make it to the table. They were the last ones, and they were always laughing in the kitchen before they came over.
You say laughing.
Laughing.
Yeah.
It was.
You're at the dining. You're at the dining
We're
table.
waiting on them.
And they're in
We've
the
got to
kitchen.
say grace before we can start eating, and we're waiting on them, and they're in there laughing. Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's kind of rude.
Yeah.
They're waiting on my meal, and you guys are in there
Clearly.
All the good
just
food is in
cutting
front
up.
of me.
You know.
All right, so
But I
good story.
I remember.
I sense there's more to it.
There is. There's some context behind it that I did not know until a number of years later. So when I was old enough that I could pay attention and pay attention to my mother and my uncle, what I noticed was they were the last ones out of the kitchen because they were waiting for that pot of arroz con wandu to be emptied of the stuff on top so that they could come back with a wooden spoon and scrape out the crispy rice at the bottom. That's what they did every
So I'm
single
guessing
time.
that was better than the.
It was their favorite thing, whether anybody else
all
liked it or
right.
not. It was their favorite thing, and I asked some questions about it, and that was something that
like, how old were you when you asked questions?
I was maybe 8 or so.
Okay, all right,
around
all right.
8. So it took a number of years for me to ask these questions, but I asked, and so I learned that was something that they did when they were growing up. When they were my age and even younger, they got the crispy bits of rice at the bottom of the pot. That was the extra special treat at dinner. It was, and so when they're in the kitchen laughing together, they're scraping this rice off the bottom, they're going back to their
Remembering
children.
their childhood.
Yeah,
They're going
man.
back to their homestead.
Yeah, right.
Where their happiest moments are.
So
Back
now,
to the Afikoman thing though,
Yes.
like you can't finish the Seder until you have the Afikoman and you like
Yeah.
split it.
Ah, yes.
So it's kind of like that, like how
Yes.
you couldn't eat.
Yeah. Yes.
well, they were finished in there. So I think part of this is experiencing with some Jewish friends at Thanksgiving a mini Seder meal with 25 of their family members for
Oh, my.
Thanksgiving
Wow.
and our family. And then experiencing what we experience in church for World Communion or for regular communion, Eucharist time. Our Eucharist Gabriella is kind of a messed up version of the Seder.
And it's Jesus's kind of his taking of that Seder meal and putting his take on
Yes.
what it means within him going forward.
And he did it not in a religious setting of a temple or a synagogue. He did it in a room with his friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so World Communion Sunday, this Sunday, kind of the whole thing is that Christians around the world are partaking of this meal. Jesus' take on the Seder meal, Passover meal. And so we kind of thought today, we came out to the farmer's market because we thought, what an appropriate setting that the meal is offered to everybody.
Yeah.
I can't choose who I offer it to. Gabriella, bless her heart, she shows up here at an inopportune time, and we take full advantage of her. And I can't hold a meal back from her or
Yeah.
from the people over here, no matter where they come from or how they
Yeah.
arrived at the table.
Yeah, right.
My job is to say, take, eat.
Yeah.
So you're just like, so we're trying to drive home. Any
yeah,
story with
yeah.
more context is
Yeah.
richer, deeper. It like that context draws you into the story. What
Yeah.
he shared draws you into the story. And our problem is we've made this flat and one dimensional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, when I'm thinking about that story of the rice and lentils, the rice and beans, I was teasing you about making it. But if you ever make it, I want to go to the pot because I want the crispy stuff.
Yeah.
I would have never known that.
You wouldn't have ever cared about
I'd have never cared if you hadn't told that part of the story. I would have never thought about withholding some of it to
Yeah.
negotiate
Right.
for something else.
Yeah, it
But
was my
here-
grandpa trying to like teach us about negotiating.
About
so-
your grandpa, your
Yeah,
grandpa
it's
was
a
a wise
fine
man.
lesson.
They got a fine lesson, negotiation. But the deal is, this meal needs to be accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And it seems that's the voice of World Communion.
But I want to suggest part of what makes it accessible is when the story is fuller and richer and deeper and has
Yeah.
context. Because I don't care about the rice and beans, pardon me, but in the
Yeah.
short version of that story, it's just not that interesting.
Right.
But boy, you start giving me some more context of the history of is it your
grandmother.
your mom and your
Yes.
uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her dad.
Like, when I
Mom
start
and
to
dad.
hear that, so
Her mom.
context filling in a story invites us into it, right? And that's what's happened with this story of communion. If I can say it, because
Yeah.
every chance I get, I'm going to say it. It's not a ritual performed at an altar.
Yeah.
We need to recover that it's a story, a world-shaping story, told at a table. And yeah, so
And,
I can
and
go
honestly,
on and on.
so I'm not sure that I would have cared so much about that crispy rice at the bottom myself if I had tried it without that story.
Right.
The meal itself is sweeter because of the context,
Yeah,
because of
right.
knowing what's
Right.
behind it. And so, and that's what we hope that people understand when bread is broken at an altar table, and a common table at that, and then broken into small pieces
I'm fixing that.
and shared with friends
Yeah.
and family and strangers and new friends all alike.
Smell it.
It's sourdough.
That's so good.
It is sweet.
I
warm,
love
and
sourdough
inviting.
bread.
It's delicious.
Isn't it, though?
It's beautiful.
And
It's so
that's-
much better when we understand the
And
context.
then we just take juice of the vine,
Yep. Fruit of the vine.
fruit of the vine.
You know, isn't this God's goal at the end of the day? When God created in Genesis, God was going to create a place where God could come walk with us, and everything goes wrong. And this is God's aim at the end of the day, should be back at the table with us. If I can say that, I love this. I love at the table so much because it always reminds us of that point. That
Thank
God's
you.
end game is get us to the table.
And let us just remind our people, and they may be tired of us reminding you, but our calling this at the table was for all this very reason. We want to remind you again that this is God's table. It's not our table. It's not Front Street United Methodist Church's table.
Right.
It's not Jay's or Stefan's or Gabriella's or Ray's. It
Yeah.
belongs to all God's children, just for the asking, just for the taking. And we're grateful.
You want another piece?
That's great.